Hi, my name's Elijah and welcome to my podcast, Songwriting for Songwriters. This week I have a really special guest, Elles Bailey. Elles is a much-loved, critically acclaimed, award-winning songwriter who straddles the worlds of Americana, rock and blues. She's just finished a tour with Jules Holland and she also talks about her very own radio show on Planet Rock. So please enjoy this conversation with Elles and make sure you check out her music, follow her on socials and get in touch. Please remember to subscribe to this podcast, follow, and if you get a moment, if you're a songwriter or you'd love to write songs, please check out my book, The Songwriter's Handbook, on Amazon and on Kindle, and get in touch with me, songwritingforsongwriters@gmail.com. Okay, joining me today, my special guest on Songwriting for Songwriters is Elles Bailey. How are you, Elles?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Everything's getting exciting again, isn't it, in your life? Because you've got a new album coming up and a new single out. So tell me, where you're at in terms of, as a songwriter right now. You've got all these new songs and a new record, which is coming, and you know what it sounds like, and there's that buzz going on. So describe to our listeners where you're at right now in that kind of process.
So I think in terms of the songwriting journey, I'm very much in a period of time where I'm not writing songs.
Yeah.
Because all of 2023, I just spent touring and writing. So every moment that I wasn't on stage, I was just writing, and I wrote so many songs for this album. And I think I made my producer and my guitarist listen to about 50 songs before we honed it down to the final ones. So we then went in, recorded them. And now I'm in the emerging stage of, right, everybody, this is what we picked and this is how we recorded it. And yesterday I listened to the test pressing. Right. So it's all coming together, and it's okay, the new chapter is sort of well on its way to getting out there now. And this is I am just starting this sort of, speaking to press and stuff. This is all quite novel again, because you go through it with your album cycles and then you sort of come off the treadmill a bit. And now it's I'm getting to talk about a new story and a new record, and it's all quite exciting. So you've got me right at the beginning.
Hey, well, thank you. I just noticed
It's fresh.
Yeah, fresh is good. I just noticed that you recorded at Middle Farm Recording Studios, which is where my band did our last album. Now that place has got a really great vibe, hasn't it? It's a very exciting studio. Tell me about how that kind of why you chose that and what impact that studio had on the record.
Yeah, so my first two albums I made in Nashville, and and this is my fourth studio album. So to sort of set the whole story, I was due to go back to Nashville in May of 2020 to make my third album. Obviously, that didn't happen. So I found a producer here called Dan Weller, who was recommended to me, and he recommended Middle Farm. So when we were talking about the kind of vibe I was going for, live in the room, really authentic, I love analog sound.
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh, I know the space for you. I know the engineer that will be perfect on this." And so I made my third album, Shining in the Half-Light, at Middle Farm Studios, and then I just knew I wanted to go back with exactly the same team, same producer, same band, same engineers, but I knew I wanted to make something different, but that it had to be at Middle Farm.
Yeah, that's cool. So when you talk about you mentioned your guitarist there and the band. Do you write all the songs on your own and then bring it to the band, or is it kind of a collab thing?
Yeah, so it's not, the band don't write with me. I do write a lot with my guitarist though. And you know what, if any of the band members wanted to come into a room with me, I'd probably, if we could all get together all the time, then I would write with them. But I find it, I keep the sort of writing slightly separate to, the recording and coming in. But the band, so like I said, the first two albums were recorded in Nashville, and then my live band was sort of learning what the Nashville cats did. Really, and equally, I'm looking forward to touring this new album again, because like the band have played on it. It's like their parts and their creativity, so they can bring that like extra spark to a live show rather than just playing someone else's parts.
Yes, I agree. There is a difference, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have like such a strong sound and voice, and a fantastic voice and a fantastic sound, and a great writer. It's that thing where like Americana music is now huge in England and the UK, and it was a time where it wasn't so big. But the sound of your record seems to me like it's kind of coming from a very authentic love of that kind of music. So when did you fall in love with that kind of music? As a Brit?
So I guess I fell in love with Americana before it was called Americana.
Right.
Bit of I'm a big fan of outlaw country and like the really early artists that pioneered this sort of genre. Like your Waylon Jennings and your Johnny Cash's and that kind of thing, and the Highwaymen. I'm a huge fan of the band, the Eagles, and that was the music that I was like listening to as I was growing up. There was a really pivotal moment for me in 2013 where I was writing with someone, and this was a point where I didn't really like know exactly what my sound was. I'd come away from being in an indie band with my brother for a really long time, and I was just like figuring out who I was as a solo artist. And there was just two moments. One, I was in my kitchen and something got a hold on me, came on the radio, and I was like, it was a song that's sort of been in my past, but never like played a big part in my life. And it sort of hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like Etta James, what is going on? This is amazing.
Yeah.
And then I was writing with a friend of mine, and he said, you should check out this band called the Civil Wars.
Yeah.
And it was these two moments that sort of happened in the same month. And obviously, like Etta James is very different to the Civil Wars. But the way that like I wanted to sort of take the rawness of Etta and Janice and that kind of thing, but then sort of amalgamate it with the sort of sounds of Americana and that really rootsy guitar. And I just started playing with Joe, and he was sort of, that's his kind of guitar playing. And so I wanted to take these two sort of sounds and bring them together. And then over the course of a few years, I was just sort of finding what I wanted to say and write and learn about myself in my 20s. And so, that's sort of how I got into the Americana thing. But I was very much championed in the blues scenes here in the UK. And I came into this like out of an indie band. And like when you're in the indie band, you're very much, I started in 2006, like at the height of indie music, which was like pop essentially at the time. I had no idea that there were these pockets of scenes in the UK that could champion artists in the way that the blues scene had championed me, and then subsequently the Americana scene. It's it was really remarkable. And I just started doing my own thing and playing pubs, and it was people coming up to me being like, oh, I write for a blues magazine. I was like, a blues magazine? There's a blues magazine? What's going on? So,
that's really interesting. The indie scene is quite competitive and quite harsh and quite like narcissistic, but actually you're right, the folk scenes and the kind of, I don't know the blues and Americana scene so well, but like certainly the folk scene, people support you and are up for celebrating you, whereas the indie scene is like knives out, it's not good.
Yeah, it's so funny. I found a documentary that was made about me in like when I was 18 years old, and I listened to the stuff I'm saying and I'm like, oh my God, Elles, if I could go back and tell you that like right now you just love watching all of your friends succeed and championing other artists.
Yeah.
Like, and back then I was like, oh, the music scene is so competitive and yada, yada, yada. And I hate those words in music now, like, because I don't believe music should be competitive.
I agree.
I believe like there's a space for everyone. And I genuinely, it's like one of my favorite things, like watching friends of mine, like, get massive achievements, and because we're all just working really hard and just trying to find a space. And whenever I get something, I'm like, well, you know what? I've done this for 20 years, worked really hard at it.
Yeah, yeah. That's great to hear that. And I think people I've spoken to of a similar kind of, who've had the same kind of length of experience in the industry, all get to that point eventually. It's a family, everyone, the space for everybody.
Family.
It's like drop the bullshit and like get on with it. You know, it's great.
Exactly.
So tell me, like, when was your? Do you remember your first song you ever wrote and what it was called?
I do. It was called what was the title? But it was like you, and I was 13, so it's like, baby, got to be what you want to be. Baby, you've got to go where you want to go, because you've only got one life and you've only got one chance to do it.
Nice. That sounds great. And do you
So,
think like, so was there a moment in which you kind of thought, you've obviously said that you've grown up around music, but was there a point where you're like, I'm a songwriter, that's what I'm going to do? And if so, what was the kind of, do you remember that moment?
I don't ever think I sat down and said I'm a songwriter. I think for me it was like I was always an artist,
Yeah.
and um, you know, and you can be an artist without being a songwriter.
Yeah.
But I never really wanted to sing other people's music. So I think because of that, I just always wrote. But I'd say it's only been in my late 20s that I feel like I could say, do you know what? I feel like right now I'm an artist and I'm a songwriter.
Okay,
So
cool.
I feel it took a long time for me to like find out exactly what I want to say and feel like I could, you know, be called a songwriter and sort of legitimately call myself a songwriter.
And out of interest, why do you think that was? Do you think it was just like an idea of not owning that title, or do you think you were just kind of working out who you were and kind of what you wanted to be and say?
Yeah, I think it's just like I just was figuring out like who I was and who I was as an artist and what I wanted to say. It's really funny. I remember thinking back at being at 21 and thinking I knew everything and like this is my views for my life now. And then I remember getting to 27 and being like, oh, I think totally differently to how I was at 21. And it had only been a few years, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just, you know, the naivety of me at that age. And then as you grow up and experience, and I'm 36 now, so I've got different views to when I was 27. It's just forever growing, forever learning, forever trying to learn from everyone around you and the world that we're living in.
Absolutely. And that's, you know, particularly in terms of kind of Americana or country music, there seems to be like a way of talking about one's life and an honesty. And you almost feel like you're with the writer as they progress through life, as they have the kid or get divorced or get married, you know,
Yeah.
the linear narrative of the writer's life. Is that important to you as a songwriter to kind of capture who you are in the moment, and then a few years later, it's like almost like not a confessional, but like a diary-esque? Is that important to have that as a writer?
Yeah, really, definitely. And I really love like the progression of my albums because like they're just me getting older and me getting married, and then there's the, you know, there's the time that I've had the child, and then there's the collective experience of a pandemic, and I made a record in that time.
Yeah.
Which has also made me, I was thinking about it yesterday. I've been I found this fourth record. They always say that it's the tricky second album. It was actually for me, this has been like I think the hardest album because of so many things. One, I'm a mum now. I'm trying to do it all and trying to make sure that my toddler is getting the best mum that he can have. Whilst music is also trying to get the best artist that can have, and so there's that, and then also the fact that I made an album in this sort of collective experience that we all had that I know a lot of people really clung on to. So to like make an album and then release an album sort of during that time, suddenly like that then becomes quite a special record.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh gosh, I want to make a better album than that. Like, but I can't take away from anyone's experiences with that music, because it was such a monumentally big moment for the whole world, really. So it's I've definitely found creating this album by far the hardest.
Okay, so you've become a relatively new mum, is that right?
Yeah, he's now 3. So
What's he called?
Jasper.
Jasper, great name. Has Jasper and the process of being a mother, obviously it's impacted you because of time and everything else, but has that kind of been an inspiration behind some of the songs on Beneath the Neon Glow?
So actually, I don't think there's any songs on Beneath the Neon Glow that are specifically about Jasper.
Yeah.
He did, however, we released a deluxe version of Shining in a Half Light. And on that one, there's a song called Spinning Stop, which is about the emotions and the experience of becoming a mother, but then throwing it, like, in the world that we live in, which is totally messed up and crazy and beautiful, but then also throw in the fact that it felt like the world stopped spinning for a couple of years. So throw in the pandemic as well, and that's what Spinning Stopped is all about. Okay. And I have written songs about Jasper that I've recorded, but they're not on this record yet.
So is there a theme to this new record, or are they just kind of like each song is a kind of a song as it arrives and they join together because they're on this record? Is there a kind of specific set of themes, or are they all beautiful in their own right and they make up this record?
I think a little bit of both. I feel like the album fits together really nicely, but the theme throughout this album is love, and all the different forms of love that you can have. So there is the love of my husband, and then there's like an angry love song, and I delve right back to the beginning and wrote about my first heartbreak. There's a song about like friendship and soulmates, and it was one of the last songs I wrote for the album. And I'd just done Americana Fest in Nashville, and I then went straight into writing 10 songs in 7 days, and I got to the 10th songwrite just before going home, because I was going home that day. And I was writing with Alison Russell's husband, JT Nero, and we were messaging before the songwrite, and he said, "Do you have any ideas for this?" And I'd been staying in a friend of mine's house, who's an Australian singer-songwriter called Tamara Stewart, who unfortunately she wasn't there. She was in Australia, but she lent me her house for the week. And I remember meeting her, and it was like this instantaneous, we have been friends for a lifetime, but we've only just met. And it felt like that, you know, the saying, you can't make old friends. I was like, I want to write that song that is like, do you know what? Old friends exist, even though you don't know it. I wanted to take down that saying. So the song's called Silhouette in a Sunset, and it's basically like, it's quite out there, but it's like your souls meeting through different lifetimes. But it's like, the person doesn't know, but don't worry, the souls know.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a big theme of love on this album, and lots of types of love. Like there's a lot of heartbreak on it, and I think lyrically, like there's a lyrical melancholy that sort of threads through this album. Although there is some celebrating songs as well, but then there is also musically and melodically, I think it's really uplifting.
Yeah.
So there's some really sad moments, but some really like sad moments on happy melodies.
Sad.
It's like happy sad. It's like happy sad. And then the opening track is Enjoy the Ride, and that's about the love of what I do. And so yeah, very much a theme of love, and then happy sad. Of that.
I love that, happy sad, and that's a great description about that old friends or old souls meeting. I've had that experience many times, and you was wonderfully explained that. So I look forward to hearing that song. In terms of you've just said there about writing was it 7 songs in 10 days? And that Nashville experience of writing, I haven't done that in Nashville experience of writing myself, but have written with people within 2 hours, and you've got to get a song and it's quick, 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 quick. And you've got to work, really bring your instincts forward and kind of leave your ego and work out what's your good bits and make space for someone else. What do you, is that how you write generally, or was that kind of like a process? Was that an exercise?
I don't have like a general right at all. And I'm just happy to put myself in situations and learn on the job.
Nice.
I've done a lot of that, like 2-week, 20-song kind of vibe in Nashville. I've been out about 10 times. And I guess I do tend, I really like co-writing. One, because you're accountable then.
Yeah.
I think when you're in the room with someone, like, you have to be in the room, you have to be present, and you're accountable to the song and to the person that you're in the room with. And I find that a really good way of writing.
Yeah.
I find that if I start to write a song myself, I can be a bit lazy and put it down and get distracted. Whereas when you're in the room with someone, you can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of like writing in that 3-hour sort of time period. I have written songs quicker, but I think 3 hours is a nice sort of time to do it. But I do believe it's really important to go back and like look at what you've written and think, actually, can we change this? What can we do better? So to have, and that's what we did with Silhouette in the Sunset. And there's this really beautiful moment of me in the studio when we're recording the song, and I FaceTimed JT and I was like, there's something not right. And so the song moved on a lot from like when we first wrote it in the room, and I rewrote the melody of the chorus, and I just sort of made it, I felt like it wasn't right, perfectly right for me, so I rewrote it, then went back to JT and I was like, what do you think? And then he put a few bits on, and then we're right in the studio recording it, and I was like, there's still a lyric that's not right. So we FaceTime each other.
Cool.
And then it was so simple. It was such an easy lyric, and I was like, how did we not see that?
Well, sometimes it is like that, isn't it? So do you think that every songwriter I've spoken to on this podcast, I've spoken to them about where they think songs come from, and many of them think it's like a laborious kind of sit down and do it, or they might happen quickly. It's kind of like they are writing the song. Other people think it's God. Other people think they're channeling something. What's your relationship with the concept of the muse, and do you believe in the muse, and where do you think songs come from? Is it from you, or is there a communion with something else?
It's funny because I've written with lots of different people who believe different things as well.
Yeah.
And I was writing with Beth Nielsen Chapman. I don't know if you know Beth or if you've spoken to her.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
But it's I love what she thinks, because she feels like the song is like surrounding you. And obviously this is only people are not seeing me right now, but I've got my arms in the air, and it's like you're catching the song and you're piecing it together sort of through the what is around your head at the time and what you capture. I definitely feel like there is a moment where you can channel something.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, I don't feel like I don't feel like I wrote this song, even though I wrote this song.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got a song on my second album called Light in the Distance, that it was just like, it was like this, something came over me and out came this song. So I mean, and I, you know, I'm a Christian, and I believe in God, and so I definitely feel like, you know, I do channel something, but I also feel like that, you know, you have to work it too. It's not something that you could just wait for inspiration to strike, if that makes sense. You've got to be there and ready to accept.
You have to kind of turn up.
You have to turn up, exactly. It's like a job. You've got to turn up, whether it's at 11 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning or 2 a.m. in the morning.
I agree. So listen, I was going to say,
there is this like there's this incredible moment just before you go to sleep, though, isn't there? When you're like drifting between
Yeah.
between dreaming and being awake. And I think there is when you're at your most like open.
Yeah.
But you have to wake yourself up if you get it, and that is also hard. So I do believe that I've probably had many number ones that I just didn't wake up for.
That's probably. Do you know? I was talking to someone the other day. Um, I've had this piece of music float into my head on and off for 20 years, and it comes in for 10 seconds and then goes again. And I know it's not someone else's song, but I can never get round to catching it. But hopefully I will one day. And it's in that kind of space you're talking about, in that in between kind of worlds thing. So that's interesting to hear you say that.
I really like that, the whole songs that sort of haunt you for
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And like and that's kind of what Beth is talking about, isn't it? That sort of like there is a song there,
It's like
you
a little
know.
realm.
Yeah, it's pretty special. I've got chills talking about this now. Songwriting is such a beautiful, beautiful thing, I think, and to be able to write something that then can like move people. And I remember chatting to a friend of mine, and he is such an incredible, talented. He's one of the most talented people I've ever met, and he's not hugely well known. And we were talking to each other about like the idea of what success is. And he turned around and he said, he loves the fact that someone will message him and say, I walked down the aisle to your song.
Yeah, yeah.
Or like, it was my dad's funeral the other day and he wanted to go out on your song. And you're like, these are momentous life occasions to people that you've never met before, but they want you to be there.
Yeah.
Because of what, like, the song that you've channeled and how that's spoken to other people. And I don't think we ever quite know what our music can do for other people. It's a remarkable thing.
Yeah, you're right about that, and it's a very nice thing to be in that position where you're soundtracking someone's life. It's
Yeah.
in some way, that is successful, isn't it? Your friend is right, I think. I'm
Mm.
speaking to a friend of mine called Sally Harmon, who is helping me promote lots of things, and her nephew is Billy Deadpan from Brave Rivals, that I believe you're
Oh,
friends with, and so
yeah.
she actually put a question forward that she would like to ask, and really, I've mentioned this to a couple of the people as well, but being a woman in what's been a male-led, predominantly in the past, has been quite a male-led industry, although thankfully that is changing. And let's face it, the biggest artists in the world today are women, and more interesting, to be honest. Have you had any kind of experiences or issues within being a sort of female voice in that male-led industry that you can speak of and give advice to younger female writers?
So I've been in the industry for a long time. I'm a really driven person, and I think, and I was quite blinkered for a long time, like as you're sort of like climbing the early rungs of the ladder.
Yeah.
And I never even kind of looked or thought like, oh, I'm a woman and they're a man or whatever. And I just sort of got on with the job. And then as I've sort of got a little bit higher, and I've started to realize that there are a lot of preconceived ideas about women and men in this industry that need to be broken down. The idea that, like, women can't headline festivals because they don't sell tickets, and I've really started to notice it. And I'm in two or three very contrasting scenes. I mean, been so championed and welcomed in the blues scene, like right from the off. But that is a very, very male heavy, guitar orientated scene. And then I'm being in the Americana scene. And I remember my first Americana awards where I won an award was in 2020, in January 2020. And the award ceremony went on, And it was this beautiful evening. We celebrated everyone that was there. And then Stevie, who was the CEO at the time, she came out and she said, I just want to point out that on every voted for award in this whole night, it's all been won by women. And the greatest thing about that was the fact that we didn't notice it until she pointed it out. And that's what you want. You don't want to notice. We don't want to shout about this, you know. We just want to, you know. And then the next day, the Blues Awards nominations were announced. And out of a possible, like, 30 nominees, 3 or 4 of them are women. And I was like, well, I've just come from this, like, and I'm not, and after that, I actually joined the UK Blues Federation because I was like, I want to make sure that women are getting their voice heard in this scene because it's so important. And I love hearing what the women of the blues scene have to say, because a lot of them are coming from it from not a guitarist point of view. And I'm not putting down any of the guitarists because we've got some incredible players in the scene, but I was really enjoying what the women were having to say lyrically and melodically without sort of using the guitar as the tool for the song. And so, and when I found out about, you know, Brave Rival, I've loved like getting to know them and taking them on tour. And so I'm a big fan of trying to champion as many women, especially in blues and rock. And I think there are a lot of amazing female voices coming through the blues scene in America and the UK right now. And you look at what Larkin Poe have done for the scene. It's a really, really amazing. And I just feel like, you know, I feel very drawn to doing whatever I can to champion female artists in the scenes.
That's great. So what advice would you give songwriters? I asked that question in 2 ways. One, to like a completely new kid who's just picked up a guitar or piano. And then also to writers that maybe are 20 years in their career. And, you know, I appreciate that you have respect for everybody. You're still learning. So, you know, but what sort of advice would you give to those, the young kid and somebody who's older and more experienced?
It's the advice probably that I was given in 2016. And it fits very nicely because I've written about it on this album. But I remember in 2016, I just met someone and he's a manager of an artist friend. We're all very good friends. And we were at this gig and there was a piano there and I introduced myself and he said, oh, who are you? And I said, oh, I'm Elles Bailey, I'm an artist. He goes, go play that piano for me. And I was like, oh God, like, okay then. So I played and I sang for him. He was like, oh, you're not bad, are you? I was like, thanks. And he said, there's no destination in this musical path that you decided to go on. It's just a journey and you've got to enjoy that journey. And I've lived and breathed that, because if you're not enjoying what you're doing, because this is a really, 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 really hard industry.
Yeah.
And if you're not enjoying it, then why do it? And believe me, I had many moments in my career when I'm like, I'm not enjoying this. Why am I doing this? And so I go out and I find the enjoyment. But the song from this record is called "Enjoy the Ride," and and it was born from a conversation with the songwriters when we were writing the song. My co-writer Ash Tucker, amazing songwriter. We've written loads of songs together. He sat down and he said, Els, what advice would you give people? Like, people are always coming to you for advice. Emerging artists, what advice would you give? Why didn't we write a song about it? And that's what Enjoy the Ride is. Like, there's no destination. There's only dreams to be realized. So sit back, buckle up and enjoy the ride. And I always use Taylor Swift as an example because, you know, she's the biggest artist in the world, but her goalposts are always moving.
Yeah.
You know, she never gets to the top of her mountain because she just builds a bigger mountain.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, she kind of seemingly finds her own new benchmark or new direction, and that's the most interesting thing. I think it's very important for songwriters and artists to the illusion of getting to the top of something is an illusion, and
It is. There's no top. There's no mountain top.
so yeah, you're right. So each album or new project is the new mountain, isn't it? It's finding what that is or unveiling it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we've had a big festival this week going into the weekend in my hometown, and I went. So we played last night with Jules Holland, and the night before was McFly, and it was so funny watching, you know, to London or whatever, and I was like, it still kind of looks the same. And okay, they're playing big stages, and they've been around for 21 years now, but we're all kind of doing the same thing. We're all sat backstage waiting to go on. Sometimes you have a dressing room. You know, earlier on in your career, you might not, but it kind of, as you progress through, it still kind of looks the same, and you're all still in a bus, and you're all still.
Well, let me just ask you a few questions, if that's okay, Els.
Yeah.
Which songwriters have inspired and influenced you in your career, or authors even, actually? Like, what kind of songwriters or writers have helped you find your voice as a songwriter?
So John Prine. I properly came across John Prine probably in 2016. And I just love the way he makes us look at the world. And he makes the mundane beautiful.
Yeah.
And he celebrates the mundane, which I just think is such his lyrical sort of use of words and making the mundane magic is incredible. And then actually last night I got to perform alongside Imelda May,
Cool.
which was when we were booked on the show. Jules hadn't really announced his special guests, and then about 4 weeks ago they announced that Imelda May was coming. Brilliant. I was like, oh my gosh, she has her album Love, Life, Flesh, Blood. I just found like such an important record for me as an artist.
Yeah.
Firstly, in a way that like she spans genres for it as well, which is something that I've always done in my albums. And so to hear that and like to hear an artist like her do that, I felt like, well, do you know what? Actually, it's okay that I do this too. Her voice is unbelievable. It's just so beautiful. And then what she talks about in her albums and the way she uses her lyrics, like, yeah. And then to perform with her last night was like quite a surreal moment. Yeah. So Imelda May, John Prine. I love like the band.
Yeah.
Like totally, and these are all like totally different artists, really. But I love being influenced by lots of different people.
I think it was quite important I quite like asking these questions, because you can kind of, and like your earlier answer actually about the Esther James influence, and you can actually hear that in your writing. You know, not that you can hear the blend of different influences, but you're making it your own, and it's quite fascinating. The forensic nature of finding out what people listen to, I find it to be really interesting. So thank you for those answers. 3 great answers there.
I'm going to say one more person as well is Brent Cobb. I don't know if you've
No, I don't
come across Brent. I probably came across him in 2019, I think. So it's quite recent. And no, 2018. And we were playing the Long Road Festival. It was the first time the Long Road had been on. And I got a text message from my bandmate that was like, we're watching someone that you would love.
Oh, that's nice.
And but the problem was I didn't get it until it had finished because it took so long to get through. So totally missed Brent Cobb and the Wood Brothers, two amazing, amazing artists, because the text didn't come through because the festival sites. So I really took a deep dive into both of those artists, and I found that Brent has such and actually the Wood Brothers as well. They've got this amazing way of writing really, really uplifting songs and not making them sound cheesy.
Yeah.
Like that real clever, you're just getting a warm hug. And like the Wood Brothers, you can tell that they come from, listening to the band, and it's like that really, really earthy Americana sort of sound to them, with that beautiful melodic, lyrically uplifting music. And and then there's Brent Cobb, and there's a lot of songs that you could just you could tell that he's been a big influence on me.
Fantastic.
And I get to play with both the Wood Brothers and Brent Cobb in Denmark in a couple of months. I can't believe it.
Amazing. That's great. Thank you for that. Some good influences there for people to listen to if they haven't already, and check out Brent Cobb as well. Your Planet Rock show, how are you finding that as a kind of thing to do? Are you enjoying that?
I love doing Planet Rock. It's a funny one because I record it once a week, or sometimes I'll record 2 shows, and they'll go out over a couple of weeks, and I will do it basically in my pajamas on my sofa. So it just feels like I don't go anywhere to do it. So I kind of often forget that there is a lot of people out there who listen to me as a presenter and who have no idea that for the last 20 years I've been on the road. And it's when people come up to me and they're like, I listened to your Planet Rock show and I just realized you're an artist, so I thought I'd come check you out, and we loved it. And I was like, oh wow, I'm more known now because I do Planet Rock.
That's cool, isn't it?
But it's amazing. I love it, and my passion for supporting up and coming artists, and for supporting women in rock and Americana and blues. I'm really able to do that with this show, and I feel so blessed that I get to do it. And as an artist, you're forever hustling. I don't feel like the hustle ever ends, but every now and then, you get some a curveball, and that's exactly what my Planet Rock show was. Never in a million years did I expect a call from the head of Planet Rock to say, "Els, would you like a show?"
That's cool.
What?
Yeah.
What's going on? Yeah, I'd love it. So,
well, it also must be nice just to share. Well, you're still, you're, whether you're a songwriter or a broadcaster, it's about communication, isn't it? And you're communicating your love of music, and life through being a songwriter, but also through being a broadcaster. You're bringing your enthusiasm and love of music to audiences. So it's a communication thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's a beautiful thing. I love that I do it, and it feels very special. And I also just need to make sure when I'm on stage, I say, "Oh, I'm also I'm on Planet Rock," because I know half the audience would love that, because they'll all give it a cheer.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, listen, we're coming towards the end. And so Beneath the Neon Glow is released on August the 9th, I think. Is that right?
You are right. Yeah.
Good. And we're looking forward to hear that. And the new single, Leave a Light On, is the kind of is that the kind of, well, you said about this is a happy, sad kind of feeling. So that's a good sort of solid, it's a great single, a great kind of solid sounding single. And that's a representative of some of the sound of the album, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of that kind of sound through that record, and that's a song that celebrates the people that support you to realize your dreams. There's a lot of people around me and that support what I do, and so it's paying tribute to one of those, who happens to be my husband.
Yeah, very important. So I'm going to ask you one question, which I ask everybody, and it is a difficult question to ask. It's the final question. And thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed talking to you and look forward to the album. If you could have written any song, what song do you wish you could have written?
So I always have two, well, I have two or three, I have three answers to this, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So, and they're all amazing songs. I think Angel from Montgomery is one of the most beautiful songs ever written. I think I'd love to have written Rolling in the Deep, the Adele song, because I really, really enjoy the money that would have made.
Yeah.
I'll be sitting on my yacht right now.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm sat here in my Choose Love jumper. There is a song on Imelda May's album. It's on the deluxe version of her album called Love and Fear. And I remember sitting there listening to that song. My guitarist and I were on a duo tour at the time, and we were driving from Lincoln down south somewhere, and we put it on, and we both looked at each other, and he was like, I bet you wished you'd written this song. And I was like, oh my gosh, I bet I wish I'd written this song. It just felt like a song that, like, you know, would have been something that I'd have also written. And then when I listened back, I watched her live a few weeks later, and I didn't know why she'd written that song. And she'd written it because she was in Paris during the terror attacks at the venue, and she went out the next day with a lot of artists were there. They all gathered together, and a priest stood up and said, you know, this is hugely confusing times, but if the choice is between love and fear, then choose love. And that's why she wrote that song. And I heard that and I just wept. Like, so they're my three songs.
Fantastic answers. Els, thank you so much for your time. And as I said, look forward to hearing the album, and keep on doing what you do. You're brilliant. And thank you very much for being my guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved this. Absolutely loved it.
Awesome.